Smell me like a Hellcat.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Matt Chats. I am here with the one and only Naomi Worden. She is a customer automation and education manager. Hopefully I got that title right.
Yep.
At Route. They are a great company that I have learned so much already from Naomi from. And Naomi, welcome aboard. I'm going to let you do the rest of the talking and kind of give us a brief intro on yourself and a little bit about the company and where you came from.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Matt. So like Matt said, I'm Naomi Worden. I'm over automation education on the customer success side at Route. And so what is Route? Route empowers e-commerce brands to be intentional about their post-purchase experience. We have visual tracking, package protection, effortless claim filing for lost, damaged, or stolen packages, and the world's first universal order history. So I sit under the customer success department on a customer success operations team.
That is so awesome. I love that. And it's post-sale is just as important anymore as it is pre-sale. Retention is huge, especially in these times with COVID and like budgets are being reevaluated. Companies and products are all being reevaluated. So focus a lot on that customer success retention side of things as well too. So Naomi, I'm glad to have you on board and, talking to us today about what your role is and how you're working with Enablement as well. So let's start out. First question, let's just dive into it. How do you and customer success operations essentially work with your enablement partners in a role like yours?
Yeah, that's a great question. So first, I think let's talk about what customer success operations is. So it's similar to how you have like revenue operations or other operational teams. It looks different at every company, but the purpose of CS Ops, so I'm just going to call it that. It's easier. Yeah. We love our acronyms in tech, so let's just do it. So CS Op teams, they basically help drive the effectiveness and efficiency of the customer success team. So they're a trusted partner in defining customer success objectives, strategies, and tactics, and in implementing processes at scale. So basically helping customer success itself be successful and their customers subsequently. So it's typically comprised of like different roles and specializations. So you'll have like an analyst, also specialized roles for expansion and renewal specialists, enablement as well for CS specifically, trainers, content managers as well for building like collateral, and a lot of like education managers like myself. So that's CS Ops as a whole. Another facet specifically for my role is like a self-serve automated channel. So that consists of like over 10 emails that trigger based on data points to welcome our merchants to Route, kick off the partnership, remind them to enable certain features, and empower them to be successful with Route and celebrate milestones in their customer lifecycle as well. So we basically leverage automated emails to emulate a personal experience with a sales rep and CSM, but we kind of just rely on the data and creating a personalized experience via emails for that, as well as like things in our product, which tons of other tech companies do. So with that kind of context, the partnership with enablement partners essentially looks like, you have enablement partners on like every different team. So you have product enablement, depending on the company, sales, like yourself.
Right.
And so what we run into is there might be some on the CS Ops team as well, but every partnership should be just as tight, like we're all working in the same team and department, because ultimately we are. So for me, for example, I work tightly with a lot of our enablement managers. We recently hired like a revenue enablement person. And what that looked like from day one was basically like, okay, let's establish rapport, get that relationship going, start setting up one-on-ones and weekly syncs, like our operational rhythm, align on the agenda of the meeting so we're productive and it's tight. Like we established our relationship early on and understanding each other. So it was easy to say like, okay, this is how our roles interact and these are the things we need to check on regularly. Yeah, so that's kind of how CS ops works. Depending on if you're an analyst, it's a little different, but for like education and like content for myself, that's what it looks like.
That's awesome. I love the idea of having customer success ops. Like, I think each specific area does entail its own set of operations and enablement at the same time. So that's awesome that you guys are doing that. That's great. So I'm gonna touch on this. You kind of alluded to this earlier, and you really kind of paved the road for the next question. But you mentioned that you just hired on another enablement manager, and you really dove in to make sure that there was a great connection, a tight connection on there. So prior to them, or even now, what kind of communication hurdles are you having with your enablement partners, or past, future, present, anything that you've noticed or can foresee?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it's really relevant too because tech is booming and
Mm-hmm.
there's so many different stages where you're in a company route. We're like growing very quickly, a younger company. So for a while, we really didn't have anyone dedicated. We had people wearing many hats. So now we're like moving into specialization. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you've got it right when you have someone in the role.
Hmm.
So I think what you run into is uh, ultimately you really want to align like your OKRs, for example, but you can run into like duplicative work, which is a major communication issue. If you're building something that's somewhat complicated because that's what the executive team wants or the executive team over your department, and you find out someone else has been building it, maybe a different way, you just wasted a bunch of time and you both could have either been partnering on it or one of you could have taken it and it could have been like a delegation, right? We're moving super quickly. The fast pace kind of makes it insane and you could totally drop the ball and like things fall through the cracks. But it's ultimately important to make sure like, hey, this quarter I'm working on these projects and making sure everyone's aligned. And I really think what solves the communication gaps is just like having regular communication, like weekly meetings. Um, Sometimes that doesn't happen, but I think the more you like communicate and regularly talk about like things you're working on, the more like your strategies generally align. If I sent a Slack out right now to a lot of the enablement partners, I think that we would probably have the same priorities right now, and that's pretty sweet. That's when you know, like, okay, we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, no, that sounds like you guys got that figured out. That's huge. So let's take a step back. We've talked about like the hurdle of what you're jumping through with communication, double dipping efforts, and stuff like that. But if I gave you a magic wand, unlimited budget, whatever you wanted to do, I love this question because it makes you really think about what you can.
Yeah.
Describe your ideal partnership with your enablement team or an ops team that you're looking at as a whole.
Yeah, that's a great question. What I would say, I feel like the more specialization, the better. And that's the hardest part is like justifying, like having that head count, like, what does that role do? And like really defining responsibilities. And I think when you come in early into a tech company, you think, oh, yeah, I'm doing all these cool things. And eventually, like, you kind of let go and like pass things off to like people who should be doing it to give you like more time for other things. And it hurts a little because you're like so excited about that project, but you really have to put your talents and put energy into like the things that you should be working on. So I would say like that would be ideal, right? Everyone kind of has either, it's not like an intern role, but you have like either like a content manager, right? So thinking about like enablement, right? Having a manager own the overall strategy, right? And then they have their own like content managers, onboarding trainers,
Mm-hmm.
etc. So I would say like that would be ideal. And then for myself as well, building out a team of people who like own certain facets of my role. So I manage our help center, but being able to have someone go like build partnerships with like product enablement, and write that first version of content, but keep me looped in. And they're working simultaneously with the people on like the enablement team as well. So I think just seeing it grow, seeing the roles like specialize, being able to like delegate to people that way, like we're just like this really tight running ship. That's always my goal, and I really love seeing people like excel and get excited in like one particular thing. And I like mentoring people as well. So yeah, I guess that's what I would see ideally with my magic wand if I had it.
Yeah, no, that's great. and you, and I feel like every answer you give me, it always just like paves the way for the next question. So let's jump into this. Growth and scalability. It's a huge topic on a lot of people's minds. How does revenue ops grow? How does operations and self grow? How do we work with these teams as they continue to grow exponentially? And then how do we scale that workflow and that workload as well throughout, time as we progress? So tell me a little bit about that. Where do you see that going for you?
Yeah, growth and scalability, it's always in the back of my mind, but it's always like, where's the time? So I think ideally you do need to have like someone in that like strategic high level role, with that team. But ultimately what you need is like processes in place, right? Like every day I know there are like 10 gaps in processes I find, but I have to think about like what's priority one, or my top 5 priorities. It's really like 20 right now, but I think we all feel that.
Right.
But ultimately, it's like kind of, I almost like tuck it away for later and make a note about it. Like we all kind of know, and it's great when the team all know like the common like issues or gaps. But I think that's how you really grow and scale. It's like, okay, we have this problem. All right, what are you going to do to fix it? And then like giving people growth opportunities within a team as well. Like, hey, we have this, if they come to you with a problem, it's like, great, go build it. Like, give me a proposal, like a solution.
Yeah.
Or yeah, just like make it part of your OKRs basically. Like, for example, we're in our second year as a company, and we needed an internal knowledge base. It started as like, I'll organize the CS one. And then it moved into, no, let's do it for the revenue teams. And then it moved into, okay, let's do it company wide. So in the last 2 quarters, I brought on Guru, a knowledge management tool. So it's a lot of times it like falls into your lap, but I think what helps all of these processes, new tools, like all of these like basically measures and tools of success is documenting like what we need to document, right? Just outlining it. We brought on Qualtrics recently for surveys. So we're looking at things like, okay, well, what's the operational rhythm for people requesting new surveys? So what stakeholders in the companies are going to create the surveys? How does that work? What's their checklist like? So thinking through like the use case for the direct user, like the end user, maybe that's just like a new hire, and building out everything you need for it, right? What's onboarding like? What are regular check-ins like? So I brought up operational rhythm a few times, but that is seriously like a lifesaver for me. Mapping out what I need to do to be successful in each facet of my role or each thing I own, even from a leadership perspective. Like if I had a team and I was running it, like what would I be doing? And then just throwing that on your calendar. So you like kind of keep yourself honest. Like this is time to work on this thing. So it actually gets done. So I think you have to think 10 steps ahead about not how well you're doing, but how successful someone else could be if they were to step in your role, and then like subsequent roles on the team as well.
Yeah, that's huge. That's so huge. Dedication of time is, I think we all lose track of time. And full transparency, I was late for this interview, so I was I don't know how, but yeah, you just get into the weeds on some projects, and yes, if you don't have the dedicated roadblocks to say this is when you're done and focus on this issue now, not only does it lead into like lack of creativity because you've been into the weeds in the project, but just also a sense of time. So
yeah,
I love that. That's huge.
I would also add like I really like OKRs. I know that sometimes like people hate them. You just have to do them right. But I think the biggest point is like each quarter you know what you're working towards. So when you get stuck, then you're able to like check. And then they also like for us, they map into like our high level OKRs as a company. So like it builds this streamlined system where everyone is working on the same thing regardless of department. And that's the biggest gap is communication as you grow as a company, right? Product will end up doing their own thing. So will sales, then CS. And you really don't want that. You want everyone working together.
Yeah, no, it's totally huge. Communication, key. I don't care how successful you want to be. If you don't know how to talk or communicate with others, throw it all out the window.
Yeah.
Naomi, this is great. I love all of this and, learning about your role and how it works. you know, if we had this role at our company, I could imagine like the different avenues that we'd venture down. What, anything else that you want to like throw out there, or questions or anything else that you want to add before we jump off today?
I think that, yeah, well, I like what you added about communication. I can't stress that enough. Um, just like thinking about, there's a lot of cool things you learn from peers too, right? So for example, if I ever post anything in like our company channel or send an email, I always think about like, and I learned this from a coworker, which is fantastic, but like think about the FAQs they'll have. And
Yeah.
having written a ton of like external facing educational content, I do that, but I didn't even think about how it works internally. So I guess my last point would be like your stakeholders. Consider everyone your stakeholders and think about communication. So it's so easy to think about, okay, we really need to like pre-sale, position things really well for the customer, make sure they understand like the value prop. We can really like get more leads, you know, get more money, sell more deals. But I think you have to think about holistically, right? Think about post-sale as well, but also think internally. Okay, I'm working on this project. Who are my stakeholders? What should I update them with? What will they understand? Like, is it a busy executive who's not going to read like long paragraphs in an email, right? Like, what's the TLDR? How does each person understand it? I always, with new hires, if anyone uses an acronym, I'm kind of like, hey guys, can you explain what that is for them? So I think like rhetoric and language can be really exclusive. So I think just the more you think about like everyone else's perspectives, who's working on what, or in the company, the more like people feel heard and connected. So I think that's like that's my baseline for everything. It's like, will they understand this? How will they, like, when do they need an update? And you can drive yourself insane with it, but ultimately it's going to set you up for success.
Right. Yeah, no, you're 100% true. I love that you called out the acronyms. Tech jargon is unreal. Like, I just imagine if you're going to the hospital and these doctors are talking all of their mumble jumbo and none of us understand it. I mean, that's exactly the same way when it comes into tech. Like, if you're a new person coming in, it can be confusing, especially when there's internal acronyms that aren't used anywhere else. So 100%. I love that. Any other last thoughts or anything else from?
No, this has been great, Matt. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love it. Thank you, Naomi, so much. Again, guys, Naomi Worden from Route. Check out her profile. She's here on LinkedIn. I'll have her tagged in this as well. And stay tuned next week to another episode of Matt Chats. I'm bringing on Davey Owens. He is a marketing strategist, and he does amazing work. The stuff that I've seen him do at Google and Amazon blows me out of the water. So stay tuned. Another episode of Matt Chats. Thanks again, Naomi. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Matt.
Welcome.